Hello all, Julia Hartstein here, spiritual healer. I wanted to share an Archangel Michael story that I have. And often, it's a practice that Pat has actually when we meet for class. She's like, all right, tell me your stories, right? Because it's that idea of being conscious of what we're hearing, seeing, feeling, things that normally we would brush off because we're not taught to honor any of these things. And it becomes the practice like you start noticing things more. Well, I had a whole bunch of Archangel Michael stories before I even met Pat, and realizing that Archangel Michael had been with me all of my life without me even knowing and or calling on him. Again, only child, Queens, New York. I had been taking care of my mother with dementia. Father had crossed over. And it was this whole process. She had been in the nursing home now because it was the transition to get her there anyway. This has been about 2 or 3 weeks. I find out from one of my clients in Long Island that there's a Joss Stone concert, because she was an avid concert goer too. I'm like, oh my God, Joss Stone, like I love her. I would love to see her in concert in a small little thing. I think it was Westbury Music Fair or whatever Westbury theater it was out in Long Island. And I wound up getting tickets. I prefer to be in the pit screaming at the person back on stage the best I possibly can and as close as I can. So got tickets that night, went probably online at least an hour or two early because I wanted to make sure I could get close. And I'm in, probably 2 people in, maybe 3 people in. I don't even think that far back. And you kind of start to get to know people. You're going to be hanging out there for a while before it even starts. There's usually an opening act. And there's this woman there. She's got to be at the time about early 60s to mid 60s, very hippie, like the long stringy hair that probably went down to her thighs at least, and big round glasses. And she's looking around. Now, the gentleman that she winds up being with, I had seen 2 walking around, and he kind of looked like a mix between Kenny Rogers and Santa Claus. Black leather hat, white hair, white beard, red button-down shirt on, black leather vest, right? Walking around. They're both having a drink or two. Didn't seem anything obnoxious. I think they might have been doing other things before the concert. Again, I don't realize they're together. I just see her standing there as I'm talking to other people, and she's whipping around, and I'm like, oh, are you holding space for someone? She's like, yeah. And I'm like, oh, okay, I'll make sure I keep the space open. Oh, okay, thanks. Right, because I'm not looking to be obnoxious. Again, it's a Joss Stone concert. We're not like going to see a heavy metal concert where, it can be a little bit more intense. Joss Stone, a little bit more laid back, and she's really not that type of person, my understanding. So we're yapping around, we're all getting to know each other because we had time. And all of a sudden I hear this woman, don't touch me, stop touching me, stop touching me. And I turn around and look, and there's this tall man standing next to her, and he's just on his phone kind of doing this. And she's like, don't touch me. And I look, I'm like, ma'am, he's not touching you. And she's like, he's touching me. And he just turned around and said, thank you very much. I'm like, yeah, of course. And, she turns around because she sees that somebody's engaged. And we wound, engaged with her. So we start talking. This is now my best friend Gershom, but we're meeting for the first time. I hear that he's got an English accent. I'm like, oh, where are you from? Because my best friend that I grew up with lives in England, about 20 minutes from him. He lives in Milton Keynes. I'm like, I know exactly where that was. That's like 20 minutes from my best friend. She's in Aylesbury. It's like, oh my God, blah, 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 blah. We're talking. He is also a singer there on his own concert. He used to be a backup singer for Joss Stone. He goes, I don't get this. He goes, this is not what she's about. I'm like, it's you're in Long Island, New York, honey. So that's a whole nother ball. Anyway, we were talking, and that man that I had described before winds up being with her. I'm looking at him, and he reminds me of my dad, right? My dad was that cool older man, kind of a thing. And he seems to be trying to calm her down, or so I thought, because she's going back and forth. Every once in a while, and she's whipping herself around into him, my friend Gershom, and I see it. And so I'm going to hold space because you're not going to do that to me. And she would try to back up into me, but I don't move, right? Pilates instructor, very strong. I don't look like it. I also don't look like the type of person who's going to start a fight with you, right? And so she's trying to, because don't bully him. Don't do that too. I'm not really fond of women who do that to men personally. I think that's a little disgusting, but That's my own personal issue. So I see her doing this and it's not okay, right? And it seems like this man that she's with is trying to, calm her down until I start to see him really just fueling the fire. And it gets to a point she's pushing into me. She won't be able to push into me. I'm not moving. And she realizes that. She winds up sitting on the floor and then standing up. I'm like, oh, what is going on? At some point, and I don't remember what's happening. And I remember my dad speaking in my ear at some point, and I think he said, he's not who you think he is, or he's not what he seems. Because again, my dad must have realized I'm seeing or getting that notion, oh, this is kind of like you. No, this man was not like that. And at some point he leaned into me too. And I leaned back. And the way that I leaned back, again, strong Pilates instructor, this is an Archangel Michael story, because I had been calling on Archangel Michael back and forth with some of this stuff. I'm like, just help me hold my ground, like just keep the space clear. I can feel push. I push back into him because he leaned into me about something that she was doing, and I just leaned back because I don't. I also don't back down. I don't look like that type of person. And he goes, "You pushed me." I'm like, "You pushed me first." So again, they're going back and forth, and it's starting to get really aggravating right after this because it had been leading up to this point, and now I see the both of them, and I'm like, oh, I don't want to fight them this whole entire time. I'm finally out. I'm finally can do something for myself, and I'm just like, thank you, Archangel Michael. Just please get them, I make space, get them away from me. I want to enjoy the concert. Well, only about 10 minutes later, if even that, the first act comes on, they see it and bolt, and they'd never come back. So I thank Archangel Michael. Again, I said this in Archangel Michael's story. I had been calling on him a lot during this time to help me hold that space. Now I call on him and thank him. Before I met Pat, I was like, please, please, please. Now I've learned thank you because I know you're going to help me. That is my Archangel Michael story. The long-winded version. I think I got a lot of that in. Anyway, Gershom, as I said, now my best friend. We've been friends ever since. He knew Joss Stone. I wound up meeting Joss Stone that night as an extra kicker. I mean, she doesn't normally let people back there. And she was lovely and gracious. And I just hung out with him and some of the other musicians, singers that also are backup for her that he knew because he worked with them. And it wound up being just an amazing friggin' night. So that is one of my Archangel Michael stories. He's always with me. He's everywhere. He's here in my car, over my doors, everywhere. Not that I necessarily need the picture of him. And I'm wondering if anybody else has any Archangel Michael stories. I have a few more, but to me, that's one of the biggest, amazing ones. And I just wanted to share a story. And do you have stories that you share? It might not necessarily be with archangels or angels. Maybe it's with loved ones. I would love to hear them, and I would love to share. So I will talk to you soon. Many blessings. Bye.